بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين متابعين بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So unfortunately, apparently the wireless mics are not working. So I'm hoping everybody can hear me. Is everybody okay? Yes. Sister at the back? Okay, good. If I start mumbling, kind of start waving or doing something, I sometimes get carried away and I forget myself and I start mumbling, okay? So last week we had a board and we had a whole list of things, right? And one of the most common, questions that came out is, how are we going to be able to do all these things? Is that right? One brother asked this. I don't see him here today. But he asked that question. He said, how can we do all these things? So I outlined, if you weren't here last week, I outlined what's the purpose of, Ramadan. It's to attain taqwa, and we went through a map of how it's attained through the obligatory, actions, through the sunan, and then also through prohibition of, preventing sins, not, doing sins, especially in Ramadan, or even outside of Ramadan, nonetheless. You got one for me? Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Alright, good. Is that better? Alright, alhamdulillah. So that way I won't lose my voice halfway, inshallah. We went through that. And so then inshallah is, hopefully it will help, or at least the objective of this, is to give us a methodology or a way to overcome the fact sometimes that we start strong, and then maybe a couple of days or a few days later we kind of have this dip, right? And we all can see this in Ramadan. Okay. Now if you come in the middle of the week, in this entire past week, second week of Ramadan, even the third week of Ramadan, you can notice the reduction in number of people coming in. Is that right? Yes. Sometimes we feel it ourselves, the first day, mashallah, we can finish just easy, right? We don't feel it. Second day, it's taking a bit longer. You're like, man, I still have 5 pages to go, right? And then come later on, the following day or even the following week, you're almost doing those alhamdulillah, I read 2 pages today. Okay. We want to circumvent that. We want to prevent this. We want to maintain the same energy, and it's important, especially when we reach towards the end. But also, it's not just during Ramadan. This Ramadan is just a platform. Okay, something we can use to kind of have a nice bit of a spring in order to continue the rest of the year. Right. So I'm going to talk about today, inshallah, some of these things we can help to maintain and sustain our acts of worship. And to be honest, a lot of them are more of things that would give you more of an imanic boost. Okay, more of an emotional fuel, if you want to think about it, right? An imanic fuel that would help propel you to maintain these forms of acts of worship. Now, there's a lot of them. I'm going to mention only 5 today. Okay, and in my humble opinion, those are things that can be implemented in any form of worship. So I'm just talking about generally worship. We can take one to specify, how we do this. We might talk, for example, about salah, or maybe reading the Quran. But whatever the case is, all these things can be used because there are forms of worship, ibadat. So when we talk about ibadat, it includes everything, whether from actions or speech, that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's generally the definition of worship. It's any form of act or speech that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So take anything. Prayers, obviously it's an act and includes speech. It's pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fasting is more of an act, it's pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want to narrow the meaning of dhikr with the tongue, that's a speech. It's pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Reciting the Quran, it's a form of speech, pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sadaqah, it's an action. So you can categorize all these one way or another, whether they're pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. Now the first one I'm going to mention has to do more of a, in Arabic, you can translate this, I'm going to say it in Arabic, right? Ba'ath wa sitharat al-shawq lillah azza wa jal. And so if you want to translate it, it means that you are kind of reviving or stimulating the emotional longing or the emotional yearning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now why is this important? It's important if you want to think about it in a way that it does 2 things. One, it gives you a stronger will. Okay. Generally speaking, they say you aren't able to do anything unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you. Right. Now the magnitude of that help that Allah provides you is equal to the strength of your will. how willing are you to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How strong is your desire to want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The stronger the desire, the more the help. This is why the purer the dua, right, the stronger it is. The more chances of its acceptance. Okay? The more assistance you can get. And so they're kind of related. And so this kind of does that. But also this fact of reviving or stimulating your emotional longing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is important, because what it will do, it will make your acts of worship a bit easier. Okay? It'll make it a bit more pliable. You can kind of go through it a bit easier, much better. Because if you want to think about it, if you sit there just kind of logically with a pen and paper, okay, just like that, to tell a person, stand the entire night on your feet, okay, to read 2 juz of Quran every day, to go through the struggle of fasting, and preventing yourself from eating, preventing yourself from your normal, innate, instinctive desires. A person will sit there and say, why would you do that? Right? Where would you get the strength to do this? Why should I do this? If you are able to kind of tap into this emotional fuel of longing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a sense you're doing this to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is one of the things of yearning, it'll make it a lot easier, because it gives you a purpose of why you're doing these actions. It gives it why am I doing this? It gives you the answer to this, because otherwise you kind of lose track. Why am I doing this? Okay. So I want to take an example of this as we go through. Okay. So one of the things that can stimulate this, right? So the longing and yearning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Yearning for His pleasure, for example. There's many ways, but one of the things you can do is to help stir that emotion is to kind of contemplate and think about the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Just think about those names and attributes. The way this works is because the more you get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay, the more you love Him. The more you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more you want to please them. Okay. I'm going to go back to the acts of the hardship you're willing to go through. I'm going to give you more of a common day things we go through sometimes. If you are a father, for example, or a spouse, quite often you're willing to go through hardships to please your spouse or your child. This is something we can comprehend, is that right? To go through the tiring act of putting the bike of your son together, just because it will please them. Just because you'll see that look in their eyes, wow, he did this for me. Or same thing with your spouse. Okay, to go through the the circle, to go to the hunt of finding the object that they desire the most. You don't think sometimes about the hardship you go through, how long you have to drive, all these things. Sometimes you endure this because in the end you have this emotional fuel that's fueling you. This is gonna please my spouse. This is gonna make my child happy, or this is gonna make my father happy, or my mother excited about something, or this is gonna please my teacher. Okay, that emotional attachment is the same way, of course, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a bit different. You are longing for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and unless you really know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how are you going to have that emotional attachment to some extent? So it's quite important sometimes to understand even what the word Allah means, the name of Allah. What does it mean? Have we ever thought about that? Right? Have we thought about Ar-Rahim and its implications in our life? Do we see it as implications of that name and attribute? How is it affecting our life? Okay? Do we sense or do we feel this rahmah? Okay? And the best way sometimes to sense this is to look at people who are less fortunate than you are. And then maybe perhaps you can feel the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The name of Ar-Razzaq, right? The one who gives sustenance, provides your sustenance, gives you rizq. And rizq, by the way, is just general, includes everything, your health, materialistic or non-materialistic. Whether it's your health, your money, your family, the house that you have, the food that you eat, all these are rizq, your intelligence that you have. Even the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had, whether you're pushed to it or you came by yourself, but you're still in the end in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? This is a rizq. Others have been prevented from such a thing. Okay? Whether they want it or not, right? Willingly or non-willingly, they have been prevented from being here. And so we can contemplate about these things, and it makes you subhanAllah ponder and think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this will kind of help develop that emotional attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this allow this push to some extent. But the other thing which is also important is to try to witness the immense things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon you. Right? We, day and night, we are turning in the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact that you wake up in the morning is a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The least of it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you another chance to get closer to Him. Give you another chance to fix the wrong that you have done. Right? Whatever sin you have fallen to, He's giving you a chance to kind of fix this one way or another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving you a chance to come closer to Him with whatever forms of worship. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the chance to live through Ramadan to get closer to Him. And in fact, acts of worship, has been mentioned in I can't remember exactly if it's a hadith or not, of two individuals who were both pious, but one died before Ramadan, the other one died after Ramadan. Right? And the distance between them in pleasure with the experience is so far for the simple reason that one was able to live through Ramadan. Right? As simple as that. Those are pleasures that we think about. And the reason this is important is because as normal human beings, it's normal for us to develop emotional attachment to people who have favor upon us. When somebody in the street does you a favor, opens a door for you, or helps you in something, you feel that you're in gratitude to this person. That you have to thank them for one way or another. And so what this does, if you think about the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you, it drives you to really want to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mean that you do it with your tongue, but thank actually requires action. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَعَمَلُوا أَلَ دَاوُودَ شُكْرًا. Right? O people of Ala Dawood, family of Dawood, perform thanks. اعملوا, which means perform, act, thanks. When you do that, if you think about this, it will drive you to perhaps push yourself in these forms of worships, because you want to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You want Him to be pleased with you. Right? With all these favors, and yet you know you have your shortcomings, but yet He's still bestowing His favors upon you. Even though you sinned, but still these pleasures are being poured upon you. He did not take away what you sinned with. Right? We all sin, sometimes with our eyesight, sometimes with our ears. Right? Generally, in our normal human world that we live in, you do something wrong with a privilege that you're given is taken away from you. Right? You drive in the wrong way, what happens to your license? It's taken away from you. But does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take our sights away from us? Does He? No. Right? Does He take our ears away from us? Our ability to hear things? No. Does He take away our limbs or ability to use it, that we use Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's bounty? This is a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave us these limbs, we're able to use it. Did we use anything that disobey Him with? If we did, does He take it away from us? No, He doesn't. Right? All these are favors from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It should push us to maybe strive a bit more, right? To think, all right, I'm praying 18 rak'ahs, it's fine. I just want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has did all these favors for me. The least I can do is thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The least I can do is conform and submit to the one that has bestowed His pleasures upon me. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's befitting for us. And by the way, this is not something that is strange. Have you ever wondered why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps mentioning the bounties in the Quran upon us? There's a reason for it. It's because it is normal for us. Somebody does something good to us, we want to repay it. But we can never repay Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course. But the least we do is we want to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by acting and by aligning ourselves by things that would please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, there are other forms of longing and emotion. Now, I just talked about pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are many things that we can use to, strive or, revive or rejuvenate or stimulate our longing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other than the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can perhaps think about our longing for the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the Day of Judgment. Jannah. Right? Whom of us does not want to enter Jannah? We all want to enter Jannah, is that right? But does that come for free? Does anything come for free? Well, if you're kids, you get things for free usually, but generally it doesn't come for free, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, أَلَا إِنَّ سِلْعَةَ اللَّهِ غَالِيَةٌ أَلَا إِنَّ سِلْعَةَ اللَّهِ غَالِيَةٌ أَلَا إِنَّ سِلْعَةَ اللَّهِ غَالِيَةٌ أَلَا إِنَّ سِلْعَةَ اللَّهِ الْجَنَّةِ. Right? The Prophet ﷺ said the merchandise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expensive. Right? What is this merchandise? Jannah. What do you have to pay? Right? Submission and obedience. That's all that's asked. To worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Right? To have your entire life dedicated for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the price of it. So are we willing to pay this or not? And so to do this, if you think about it, praying 20 rak'ahs should not be that much. Right? If you really desire entering Jannah. Now there's other things. You can desire, longing to be with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We haven't seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, have we? Right? Unless you're an amazing person who lives for billions of years, which does not exist. But none of us have seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do we love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam enough that we want to see him? Right? And if you want to see him, guess where is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He's in the Firdaus. Is that right? Firdaus is the highest of levels of Jannah. If we really want to see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and long for that, shouldn't we put the effort? Right? This, by the way, is not something that is abnormal. If you want to be the CEO of a company, what do? You work hard. Right? If you want the best grades, you work hard. But in the end, you have a target. You're desiring something. You're longing to have that, doctor in front of your name. Okay? You're longing to be the respected, esteemed person in the community. But on the other hand, we're seeking something that is better. That's the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meeting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there's an even higher and more pleasure than all these things that is bestowed only on a special group of people, right? And that is seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. This is in Sahih Muslim. But it's also mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. Right? Faces that have been beautified, they're bright. What are they doing? They're looking up to their Lord. They're seeing their Lord. And the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned this hadith in the Sahih Muslim. And I want you to imagine this conversation, right? To think that you are, you have entered Jannah and you're having this conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would come, right? And he would say, subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, and this the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا دَخَلَ أَهْلُ الْجَنَّةِ الْجَنَّةِ. Right? The people of Jannah enter Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say, تُرِيدُونَ شَيْئًا أَزِيدُكُمْ. Now imagine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking to people in Jannah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make all of us among the people of Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do you want anything more I would give you? Can you guys imagine this? We, the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created us. And He tells us after we enter Jannah, He said, do you want anything more I would give you? So the people of Jannah, what do they say, right? They would say, أَلَمْ تُدْخِلْنَا الْجَنَّةِ وَتُنَجِّنَا مِنَ النَّارِ. Right? أَلَمْ تُبَيِّضْ وُجُوهَنَا. Didn't you whiten and brighten our face? Didn't you allow us to enter Jannah and prevent us from the hellfire? What else do we want? Right? What else do we want? And then subhanAllah, the next thing that happens, the Prophet ﷺ says, فَيُكْشَفُ الْحِجَابِ. Right? The barrier has been revealed. And they're never given وَلَمْ يُعْطُ شَيْئًا أَحَبَّ إِلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّظْرِ إِلَىٰ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. And they're not given anything to them that is more beloved, more pleasurable to them than looking upon the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Isn't that sufficient to stir our emotions, to push ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now this is something that is not given to anybody. Right? Are we ready to do something like this? Right? So this is what we're talking about over here, steering the emotional, yearning and longing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it can be such a powerful emotional drive that can drive us, to not even think about the hardships, that we're ready to go through the hardships. And so this is one thing we can do. And that would help us to maintain those acts of worship. Now the second thing we can do to help us is, and I mentioned this in the khutbah, which is very beneficial, but I'm going to mention it again, is to understand and study and to remember the virtues of specific times and spaces perhaps. Okay, now I mentioned this hadith, I'm going to mention it again. And this is just general. This hadith is by Muhammad ibn Maslama radiallahu anhu. He said, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ لِلَّهِ فَأَيَّامِ الدَّهْرِ نَفَحَاتٍ. Right? There are time periods, seasonal times, in the time periods of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where there are waves of blessings. Waves of blessings. فَتَعَرَّضُ لَهَا. Prophet ﷺ is saying, expose yourself to these waves of blessings. فَلَعَلَّهَا تُصِيبُ أَحَدَكُمْ فَلَا يَشْقَ بَعْدَهَا أَبَدًا. Perhaps that these waves of mercy and blessings would strike one of you, that afterwards, after it strikes him, he is never ever miserable again. Which means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these are waves of mercy. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy upon you, means that He will forgive your sins. Means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased by you. Means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would allow you to enter Jannah. And so how would you ever be miserable again? Right? So these are waves of mercy. And so each time period, now Ibn Rajab rahimahullah was commenting on this. He said, for every certain time period, there are actions of worship which a person can use to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so perhaps it's imperative that we know these acts of worship so that we can use them to draw close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we're talking about Ramadan, and I mentioned this, we attended the khutbah, and we also know this, but it's a good thing to remind ourselves, the different virtues that are associated with Ramadan, whether it's doing Qiyam Ramadan. Okay. So if you realize that the virtue of Qiyam Ramadan, the reward for it is having your previous sins forgiven. Now we all sinned, is that right? We're human beings. The Prophet said, if you were not sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would kind of eliminate you and have other people. Right? This is our normal behavior. We sin, we make mistakes. And by sinning actually brings out another form of worship, which is asking for forgiveness. It brings out another beautiful emotion of feeling guilty. Right? Knowing that you are unable to stay on the straight path without the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are other things that are like subhanAllah, coincidence of having us be not perfect, having fault, being faulty. Because it brings all these different forms of worships which would not exist if we were perfect. You guys all agree? Yes? Alright. And so, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and through His messenger, tell us about the virtues of doing Qiyam al-Layl, it would encourage us to endure the hardship of this. Right? It will endure to say, hey, listen, there's an immense reward for it. It's the same reason why a person would run any sort of race or any sort of championship, would endure the hardship of the training that they have to go through. Any athlete, professional athlete, you can ask them, they'll tell you to go through very painful training that they have to go through. And you ask them, why do you do this? Right? They say, because I love the game. Right? But in reality, it's because in the end, there's all these rewards, right? Whether it's the fame, whether it's the money they get, whatever reason it is, there's always a reason for it. There's they think of it's a virtue, a reward for it. But for us in the end, because we know that this life is momentarily, we don't really think about these things. It should not be important for us. The glamour of this world should not, make us move away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if we get stuck at it, we're not moving forward. Right? No matter what worldly things it is, whether it's clothes, houses, cars, these are supposed to be means to an end. We should not be staying at that place. Okay? And so if you think of the virtue that it's forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you for worshipping Him the entire night, it will drive you to do it. Right? If you think that fasting, right, the virtue of fasting is having your sin forgiven, but also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, hey, listen, out of all your forms of worship, this is for me. Right? You know you're doing definitely something that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Its reward is forgiveness. Right? Man sama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbi. Whomever fasts Ramadan in belief, in faith, and seeking its reward, it's okay to seek a reward, by the way. Right? It's not something that is bad. Like even the prophets did this. Zakaria alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, and he says, وَكَانَ يَدْعُونَنَا رَغَبًا وَرَهَبًا وَكَانُوا لَنَا خَاشِعِينَ. They used to worship us, right, in desire, in hopes for our pleasure, right, a reward, and out of fear. Rahab, which means reverence, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَانُوا لَنَا خَاشِعِينَ. And they, for us, they were khashi'in, submissive. And so if you have, I'll think about all these virtues. So that's why it's kind of important also to, if you have Riyadh al-Salihin, by the way, it's an amazing book. Right? It has a lot of virtues of different types of worships. So if you can spend time at home reading those, one chapter at a time, hadith a day, it's a beautiful book, Riyadh al-Salihin. I know it's in every masjid almost, but quite often people don't touch it for some odd reason. Tons of virtues. If you want to look at the virtue of fasting in that, it's quite a few pages. Okay, just look at it. Go home and look at it. What's the virtue of fasting? What's the virtue of doing Qiyam al-Layl? Right? It will help you, give you a target and aim. Understand the virtue. Why am I doing this? What's the reward at the end of it? Okay, if you desire it so much, you're going to work for it. So that's the second thing. The third thing we can do, or which is kind of important, by the way, is to get rid of everything that would come in our way of fulfilling this. Now, more particularly talking about people, individuals, right? In Arabic, they're called muhbatin. Muhbatin is that people bring you down, okay? So it's called nabth al-battalin. Battalin, people who means people who are idle, which means they're doing nothing, right? This is a month of worship, and people who are not worshiping, they're being idle, right? If they're not sinning, the least thing they're doing is nothing, so it's useless. You're not taking advantage of your time. Okay? And so you don't want these people. These people are not going to help you, right? In Arabic, they say as-sahib sahib, right? The friend will pull you, right? Either will pull you to the good or the bad. Either or. It just he'll pull you or she will pull you. And so it's imperative that at that time, if you really have those high aspirations, okay, those high desires, that you don't, you try to leave the people or individuals that will bring you down, that will keep you away from it, and try to associate people would have, in Arabic they say it's himma, right? Which means people that have a strong determination, or they have a zeal, or they have a strong desire to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need those people because they tend to charge you, right? They tend to inspire you. They help you along the way. And so you need to find individuals that will help you through this. Sometimes it's difficult, especially in the time that we live in, but your highest chance is to find them in the masjid. Right? If you don't know them, get to make new friends. Sometimes you just have to kind of temporarily pause our friends that we're used to and try to get to know more people. There's nothing wrong with it, right? Widen your circle of friends so that you can find the people that would help you on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is perhaps maybe the third thing we can do. Now a fourth thing that can help us maintain our forms of worship is that you should be preparing or have a list of things you want to do in Ramadan. You can continue this out of Ramadan. But also prepare for it. That's the second part of it. And then third, make yourself accountable for that list. Judge yourself for that list. Okay. So let's take an example. You can say, my target is to pray all 20 rak'ahs in Ramadan. Some massages pray 8, that's fine. You can intention be, I'm going to pray behind the imam until he finishes. This is the intention. Write it down. Now there's preparatory work for that. How do you prepare for it? Okay. So when it comes, for example, for Tarawih prayer, I'm just using this as an example. Now everything has an example associated with it. Whether it's Quran or just remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But whatever the case is, it's just preparatory work. And we mean by preparatory work is the stuff that would prepare you psychologically, prepare you spiritually. Because the last thing you do, if you jump into a situation, you just jump into it, quite often you're not really prepared for it. You're absent-minded. And so it's not going to carry you. So for acts of worship, for example, you want to go through the actions of tahara, right? Why am I purifying myself? In reality, some of the scholars say this preparatory work is just to prepare you psychologically, right? I am purifying myself outside through the wudu. Logically, I should also purify myself internally. And this perhaps might happen through the remembrance that you do. You say Bismillah before you make your wudu, right? And then there's the azkar after you make the wudu. Prepare yourself physically by wearing your best of clothes. Okay? Mentally, I'm going to go to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm walking through it. I'm going to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I should not on the way do things that negate that. Right? You're going to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You prepare yourself. Generally, when we go to guests, when we're going to visit people, what do? We have our gift in our hand, right? We have our nice clothes. We call them ahead of time. Right? We put our perfume or cologne on. We prepare ourselves. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's nice. Right? I'm going to visit my friend, or I'm going to go visit somebody. How it looks. Right? It'll look horrible if you walk into the house stinking. You don't want to visit a person like that, right? Didn't come with anything. Didn't talk about it, knock on the door, just walk in, didn't call them ahead of time. It doesn't look good, right? You're not going to have that connection with that person. Most likely he might not even answer the door if he sees that, right? He's like, who's this? Why is he knocking on the door now, right? Doesn't he have a cell phone, communication, hello, whatever century we're in? All this is important. It does prepare you. So you're walking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You remember the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every step I take will elevate you with a hasana, will reduce a sin. Okay. I enter the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the house of Allah. Okay. How can I disrespect Him in it? You're sitting there, you're going to remember, now I'm going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the prayers. Okay. What have I done before that? Did I obey Him? Did I disobey Him? Think about that. When you say Allahu Akbar, literally you're saying that Allah is greater than anything else. How dare I think about anything else in the prayers? When you say that Allahu Akbar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows everything, but at this point, He is paying you special attention. Can I move away from that? Should I sidetrack from that? Whether visually, physically, or through my heart. Right? All these things are preparatory. They allow you, they put you in a specific spiritual state that will help you go through these 4 acts of worship. Okay? When you're going through these, preparatory work, it helps you. It never does not help you. Now, after you do all this, you are putting yourself accountable. You're judging yourself. Before, during, and after the acts of worship. Before the act of worship, did I prepare for it enough? Okay. During it, am I doing it properly? Am I focused? Right? And it keeps you in check because sometimes we do, our minds go somewhere else. But if you keep yourself in check, you can bring it back again. Right? We all go through this sometimes. SubhanAllah, unless people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed, they're so focused in their prayers, it's amazing. It does not matter what's going on around them, they're just completely focused. They're almost in a trance. We do meet occasionally people like that, but the majority of us are not at that level yet. We want to reach the level of ihsan. You're worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knowing that He sees you, or that you see Him. If not, know that He sees you. Right? So how would we act if we are standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Completely different. Okay? And so we should have that preparatory thing. And so you're judging yourself, did I do this before and during, and then after? Did I do this properly? What went wrong? How can I fix it? Right? So it's important to these things. Those will help you kind of maintain this. If you hold yourself accountable to it, it means that you're always kind of revisiting this. It's not that you do it and that's it, it's done. It doesn't become a customary thing. Because the last thing you want to do is something that becomes a custom, right? I'm doing it, I'm just doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing it. And you neglect the aspect of worship, aspect of it. You don't want that. By putting yourself accountable for it, you're still maintaining that idea that this is a form of worship. Okay. Now the last thing we're going to talk about, which is sometimes difficult, but inshallah Allah make it easy upon us. And this is one of the highest things we can achieve. We talked about enduring the hardship, okay? By longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By judging ourselves, doing preparatory work, by leaving people behind that will bring us down, associating with people that would help us through it, by learning the virtues of times and periods. But this last one thing, if you're able to attain it, I believe that you have attained the level of ihsan. Okay? And it's to actually feel the sweetness of the act of worship. And if you want to understand this, this is why the Prophet ﷺ would say, وَجُعَلَ قُرَّةَ عَيْنِي الصَّلَاةِ, right? The soothing of my eye was made the prayers. When the Prophet ﷺ would stand the entire night to the point that his feet, right, would swell. Shaqaq means that they would kind of have tears in them, okay, or injuries in them. They swell from the long standing in the night. And Aisha would say, "Why are you doing this? Didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive your sins? You're the Prophet. You're entering heaven. You're entering heaven. Why are you doing this?" What was the other Prophet ﷺ saying? His answer was, أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Should I not be a thankful servant? The Prophet ﷺ said, I'm being thankful to Allah. I'm enjoying this prayer. Right? It's the soothing of my eye. The Prophet ﷺ is it's the sweetness of this act of worship. And so, if you're able to enjoy this, be able to attain this, you will be able to maintain what you do in Ramadan in and out of Ramadan. I guarantee this. By the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course. Now you have to remember, as we're talking about this, all this, please remember that we are unable to do anything except by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so we should always consistently make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. If we really want this, by the way. Okay? The preparatory work is a sign that you really want this. It's a sign of ikhlas, sincerity that you want to do this. Without the preparatory work, it's useless. Okay? They usually say if you don't plan, then you're planning to fail. Have you ever heard this before? People do business, they always kind of tell them this. If you don't have a plan, right, you're planning to fail. You're working into this blind. You don't know what's going on. Okay? And so we have to make dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the energy to go through all this. I'm going to mention 7 things, perhaps that can help bring us to that level, right, of enjoying feeling the sweetness of the acts of worship. Now, the anchor of all this is to have your heart present in the act of worship. And in Arabic they say jama' al-qalb, right? Which means that have your heart being collected. You're not thinking about different things. Your heart is not at home. Your heart is not with your friends. You're not worshiping, man, when is this going to end? I want to go play with my buddies, right? Or whatever the case is that's keeping you distracted. Try to clear your mind of this. And the preparatory work for the act of worship will help you do this. Okay? Stay focused. Your heart is in unison. Focus on pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Focus on this act of worship that you're going to present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how are you going to present something defective? You don't want to do that. You want to perfect it. So that's the first step, is to have your heart collectively being in that act of worship. The second is to comprehend the acts that you're doing. If it's reading the Quran, it would be beautiful to, in addition to being focused, to understand what you're saying. And so if you understand Arabic, that is great, but doesn't mean you're going to understand tafsir. So it's good to read tafsir if you're going to read the Quran. If you don't speak Arabic, then read the translation. So when you read this, you can comprehend the effect of it. When you're worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you're standing, what does that mean? When you're prostrating, what does it mean? When you say Subhana Rabbil Azim, what does that mean? When you're doing sujood, what does it mean? Why the Prophet ﷺ said that the servant is close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the state of sujood. When you say Subhana Rabbil A'la, what does it mean? When you're saying Rabbi Ighfirli, please forgive me, are you feeling it? Okay. All these things are allowing you to comprehend of all things that you're doing. Right? So that's the second thing. The third thing is to glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ta'zeem. Right? Unless you're glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the end you're going to flip the relationship, you're going to think you're better. Right? Unless you're glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not going to find a need to do these things, which is, by the way, is completely wrong. Right? You have to realize or understand what your true position is, who you really are. In the end, you're a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whether we like it or not, by the way, if you're not a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're a slave to something else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this way. We have the inside, it is our innate creation, how we are, that we submit to one thing or another. We will be slaves to one thing or another. So either you free yourself from these worldly things by being a slave to Allah ta'ala, or you're going to be a slave to these worldly things. Whether they are materialistics, whether it's the money. We all hear people who are they worship money, right? They tell you talk to me. When they need to talk to me, they say where are you going to put forth for it? Right? They worship money. They'll do anything for it. Does not matter what it is. Some people, it is their own desires. What pleases me, right? And this is one of the worst things, because they've taken their desires as their Lord. They worship their desires. And this was mentioned in the Quran. Others, sometimes it's the opposite gender, right? The attraction to the opposite gender. This is all they think about. This is all they just want to attain that. And so this is what became their form of worship. This is what they put themselves, they shackled themselves in those things. They became slaves to these things. Okay? You don't want that. Whether we like it, we will be slaves one way or another. So why not be true slaves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Free ourselves truly from these things. Because if you're a slave to worldly things, others will control you. They'll come to you from that door. You'll succumb to them. But if you're a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have the highest of prides. Because nobody can control you. Neither by money, right? Or worldly things. You mention it, right? Position, nobility. They will never be able to make you succumb to them. Period. You're free. You truly are free. Okay? And so you can only attain this by glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fourth, in Arabic it's called hayba, right? There's a difference between hayba and khawf. Hayba, the best word in English for it is reverence, right? To revere Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I know reverence sometimes have the meaning of respect. Of course, that's granted. But there is a slight meaning of fear associated with it. To revere Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because in the end, we did not give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala His due rights. We have shortcomings. Is that right? And being our Lord, when we have those shortcomings, we do put ourselves in a position of being in a place that we are deserving of being punished. So we have to revere Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we revere Him, we're not we revere Him because He's our Lord. We revere Him because we have shortcomings. We have wronged ourselves by not fulfilling our duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that is the fourth thing. And by the way, this spurs from glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like this reverence comes from glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the fifth thing is hope. Raja. Hope in gaining the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hope in gaining the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when you're doing these forms of worships, if you know that this form of worship if you do it often, it will gain the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. You will love doing this form of worship. You will start enjoying it. You'll start thinking about Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, right? Your part is in it. You understand, you're comprehending, you're submitting, right? You fear Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, you're doing this to get closer to Him, and you hope for His forgiveness. And there's another, the sixth one I'm going to mention, is an interesting quality which we also have, we should have, which is called al-haya. Now really there's no true or good translation for haya. It's quite often translated as shyness or shame, right? It's a mixture, haya is a mixture of both, shyness and shame. And it comes because we know, as I mentioned this earlier, you have wronged yourself by not fulfilling your duties to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. You have wronged yourself by the acts of worship that we're doing, we're not perfecting it. We're presenting Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and so we have this haya from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Please forgive us. This is, by the way, when we finish a form of worship, we say astaghfirullah, right? We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to forgive this act of worship that is incomplete, and please accept it from us. We are defective, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, right? We did not give you your due rights. Even the angels, by the way, on the Day of Judgment, when it comes, right? One thing they're gonna, they're gonna say, "Ma abadnaka haqqa ibadatik." The angels are gonna say, "We did not worship you sufficiently enough, befitting of you, my Lord." We're talking about angels over here, things that don't sin, beings that do not sin, beings that are completely obedient. So what should we say? Okay. So this is haya. Now the last thing I'm going to mention has also more of an emotional feeling, but it'll also give you the pleasure of doing this obedience. Is to be honest with yourself and recognize the blessing of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, that He allowed you and permitted you to remember Him, permitted you to be able to come to this house of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, to do this form of worship, while at the same time He prevented others. Right? Wallahi, this is an immense pleasure from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, that He allows you to read His book, that He allows you to prostrate for Him, and He says, "Listen, I'm going to accept you, just come." Right? Wouldn't that make you enjoy this form of worship? It would. And I know I mentioned a lot of things, 7 in a row, 5 things and 7, and I'm a professor, this is the worst thing I can ever do to you guys. I should not give so much information at one time. But to be honest, this is Ramadan. And it's hopefully inshallah, beneficial for us to maintain those acts of worship and help us even after the acts of worship. I thought about streaming this live, so it'll be on Facebook, but I completely forgot when I started. But I think it's being recorded 1 and 2. So, I guess feel free to share with them, others if you guys want, inshallah. I'm here for questions. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask any questions regarding the talk, or maybe perhaps outside the talk. And if I can ask, inshallah, I will do so. Jazakumullah khair. Yes?
How do we stop our mind from wandering during Salah?
How do you stop your mind from wandering in Salah? Alright. Just keep reminding yourself. Stop. Focus. I'm standing in front of Allah Ta'ala. How can I not think about something else? Now, by the way, all these things, that we mentioned, especially this last aspect of it, feeling the sweetness of the fact of worship, it really has to do that you are developing a relationship, for lack of better words. Okay, think about it this way: you go visit somebody, or whatever case, you're your friends. Okay, you're enjoying his company. Why? Because you're completely focused with him, right? You're comprehending the conversation. You're enjoying the conversation. You're responding. You're going back and forth. Okay, the reason you're able to enjoy this is because you're connecting, right? This is a good conversation. And so this focus aspect of it is still important. And so you have to remind yourself, I'm focusing, right? My mind don't go away somewhere else. But what would also help you to focus is if you understand the meanings of the Quran, or what's being recited, or the dua you're doing, the meaning that you're doing, or the Quran that you're reading. What does it mean? It's okay, by the way, not to finish an entire juz in Ramadan. Most people might disagree with this. It's not mandatory to finish the entire Quran, the entire Quran in Ramadan. Now, I'm not saying this to tell you not to finish it. By all means, finish it. Right? Have 2 types of readings: a reading that you're going to finish the Quran, but also have a slower paced reading. One that you're going to spend time. All right, I read this verse. What does it mean? Okay, so that when you read it again later on, you're going to remember this. Okay, so this would help you focus. If you are reading, if we're with the Imam, and you actually had memorized the entire Quran, this would help you, of course, better. Because you're going through the verses, you understand this, you're contemplating about the verses. This will help you focus. Okay? If you wander off, But again, just bring back yourself back again, right? Just remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching me, right? How am I, how can I go away from this? So perhaps these are a couple of things that can help you do that. Allah. Any other questions? No? Yes? Wa alaikum salam.
We know the Malaika is in the judgment day, actually, they will be questioned by Allah.
The question is, the angels, will they be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Not questioned, because they didn't do anything, right? But more of they'll be used as witnesses, right? So, for example, a person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is judging him, and he'll say, I didn't do this, right? So the question will come to the angels, did he do this? Okay? And there's the list, so this is more of a questioning. They're not going to be judged as, did you obey me or not? Because it's impossible for the angels, by their creation, they would disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is mentioned in the Quran. لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم, right? They do not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala no matter what he says. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands, they obey it immediately, at its fullest. Alright? And so for them, there is really no, the will factor, that they don't have that. The will to disobey, right? The free choice, if you want to call it that way. They don't have that, which means that there is no need to judge them. Okay? Did you do this or not? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them obedient, individuals would judge. There are creations Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them free will, and they will be judged. Those are ins and jinn. Okay? Both of them, both creations, will be judged. Alright? They'll be held accountable for what they did. Allah A'lam. Okay? Any other questions? Come on, guys. So either you can, understood everything completely, right? And I did a great job, or everything just went. I hope it's the first, inshallah. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.